Russia finds itself in a difficult war in Ukraine. So it goes without saying that its full attention and peacekeeping resources are not necessarily focused on the peacekeeping mission in Nagorno-Karabakh. No matter Sergei Lavrov's visit to Yerevan, no matter the conversations that have been had between Armenians and Russians over the past few weeks or months. And concurrent with this relative inattention, there have also been clashes in the past couple of months or so between Armenian and Azerbaijanis. Such clashes evoke fears for the future. But fortunately enough, with those clashes, there have also been spurts of talks, some of them stewarded by the European Union, that might have helped calm things down a bit. And so I believe that the EU can play a role in this conflict, the least being to stand behind any agreed steps toward an eventual settlement by deploying its financial and technical support structures. Welcome to Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenian Matters. This is number 31. Like everyone else, and particularly those living in the diaspora like yours truly, I too tend to choose my sources in order to help me draw my own conclusions and analyses. In my case, I like to read a lot the briefings by crisis group, particularly those that include one of their analysts, Olizia Vartanyan. I also follow the English version or the English flank of CivilNet TV. Crisis Group gives the broader picture. CivilNet TV, for me, provides the local color and analysis. But in order to enhance prospects for peace in this conflictual enclave and in this equally conflictual South Caucasus, I believe that the EU and its member states have practical roles to play too. And this today is pretty much the focus of my very short intuitive reactions. Let me share a few points with you, merely food for thought, informed by what I read and listen to, and my own research and my own studies on the matter. Having already brought leaders from Armenia and Azerbaijan together for talks, Brussels should now work with both sides to develop a format and, more critically, an agenda for future negotiations. Sitting and talking is fine. It breaks the ice. Making a phone call between Baku and Yerevan might be an ice-breaking exercise. But for talks to happen and for conflict resolution, mediation, negotiation, arbitration even to proceed, there should be an agenda. Such an agenda and such a format would help tamp down flashpoints, dangerous flashpoints, such as Kelbajar and Gerargunik, which have witnessed deadly skirmishes since 2020. That's one thing that the EU could focus on. Another would be for the EU to support the role of the Organization for Security Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE Minsk Group, which has for the last 2 decades been the main international format for negotiations in Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Now, the OSCE has been maligned. It has been maligned because people say that it hasn't delivered anything. It's been fruitless, chin wagging for 20 years, and look what happened, another war, another mess. There might be some truth in that. But let us not also forget that the OSCE constituent members, France, the USA, and Russia, are not at their best and optimal state at the moment to come together and help this facilitating, catalyzing, peacemaking process. However, to use this and to say that the OSCE no longer has a role, no matter whether it's a bit more limited than before, no role to play, is in my opinion wrong, not least because even though we might say that, well, what is the outcome? What happened in those many years? The OSCE has learned a lot by virtue of its history and experience, and it could contribute to the Iranian peacemaking process in the future. The EU can help support the OSCE in its Minsk Group mission. Then, despite rising tensions between Moscow and European capitals, I just talked about the war in Ukraine, the EU should also continue to support Russia's efforts to resolve the dispute between Armenia and Azerbaijan. It should avoid actions that suggest that it is looking to block any mediation efforts by Russia just because we have fallen out in a major way as West Europe, as the West. We've fallen out in a major way with Russia because of Ukraine and the Ukraine-Russia war. Russian and Western interests, tactical and strategic to a large extent, meet, coalesce when it comes to the South Caucasus and when it comes to Nagorno-Karabakh and the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. And this is something that we in the West, when we try to rubbish President Putin and the Russians, we should remember, by Russians I mean the political establishment, don't get me wrong, we should remember that Russia plays an important role, not only by virtue of its diminishing peacekeeping forces on the ground, by its leverage also in the region. And therefore, we should make sure that we do not demonize Russia in its attempts to help both sides talk rather than fight. Then, on a detail, but it's an important detail, Brussels, which has the funds and its merit, its strength has often been financial and technical rather than political. I've seen this time and again in the Middle East, North Africa region. The money is there, the technical support is there, but the political oomph is not there. So on a detail, Brussels should boost its funds to help clear landmines and unexploded ordnance from the conflict zones, which are now too dangerous to allow for reconstruction or resettlement. I've had the pleasure, perhaps the privilege, I would add, of talking with people who are involved with the Halo Trust. And this trust has played an active mine clearing and training role over many years in Nagorno-Karabakh. It has actually trained many Armenians, local Armenians, to help with this exercise. So this is not somebody flying from outside and taking over. This is somebody coming and empowering the local population. So let the EU think of such exercises that would help clear landmines, the likes of Halo Trust, and let us not cut off our noses simply to spite our faces. Now, the ethnic Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh are nervous, and they have every reason to be nervous. The war pretty much rent asunder the enclave, its contiguity, its continuity, its resources, even things like water and electricity supply to this village or that is now no longer fully under their control. Azerbaijan has a big role, a big impact on the running of daily lives in Nagorno-Karabakh these days. So I wouldn't be surprised to add that those Armenians living in the enclave are nervous. They're nervous that a deal, such as the one that the EU was seen to be trying to facilitate, or other deals as well, the visits by the Prime Minister of Armenia, Pashinyan, here and there and everywhere, with the Azerbaijani president, with others, the eagerness, if I can use that word, of Armenia to open diplomatic relations with Turkey, all this makes the Armenians in Karabakh nervous because they fear that the deal will mean full Azerbaijani control of the enclave, which would then force them to flee another refugee wave, but more to the point, whatever is left in their hands would also disappear, Stepanakert and others. So support for these people post-war needs to be crucial in sustaining a deal. It's good that the EU and others are talking to Armenia, to the Armenian government, to others, but it is also important to remember that there is a rump Armenian presence in Karabakh which cannot be ignored. Now, these are just thoughts, food for thought. Some people might welcome them from listeners, others might not. I can understand that. But let me also here add a point, because I've been told this time and time and time again. It's a small comment about those who are protesting against the Pashinyan-led discussions. You can see the demonstrations, the gatherings in Armenia, in Yerevan, in front of parliament, in front of the prime minister's office, the defense ministry, basically protesting against those negotiations. Part of the protest is because of the lack of transparency, which ties in with what I said about the lack of an agenda. The format might be there. I'm not too sure if the agenda is there either. So in a sense, that is part of it. But it's also a rejection of anything that reeks of compromise with Turkey or with Azerbaijan, and is considered as nothing short of appeasement by some Armenians. I say to these people protesting today, and those in Europe, in London, in Paris, in Brussels, elsewhere, I say to them, I do understand your concerns. I do understand also your distrust of President Aliyev of Azerbaijan, as much as Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Time and history have not proven that they are friends and allies of Armenians. And what has happened during the last Second War and beyond has added to the nervousness rather than calmed it down. However, I'm a conflict resolution practitioner. I always seek compromise. I always try to find the half full glass. I always try to find elements of hope in the midst of despair and frustration. That is part of my practice. That's part of what I do as a lawyer. So I would add here to those people, not only that I understand their fears, but that Armenia is now caught between a rock and a hard place. It's hard to accept this, but the Armenian military, the army, is bedraggled, and it will be a disaster, in my opinion, if the Republic is faced with another Azerbaijani Turkish offensive in the near future. The performance of the Armenian military in the recent war, we all know, a lot has been said and written about it, was uncoordinated and well below par. And I'm sorry for all those young combatants who were trying to fight in the war, and they found themselves at sixes and sevens. But as Eric Hakopian of CivilNet, going back to one of my reference sources, has often said in his insights, the military has to be re-equipped, but it also has to be restructured. And Armenians should really wake up. It is time, not only after the war in Karabakh, but also after the genocide of 1915, Armenians should realize that we're living in a different world today. 2022 is not 1915. 2022 is not even 1990 and 2020. They should try for a minute to park ideology and passions to one side and replace them with history and rigor, the rigor of the Armenian approach, not the passionate emotional response. Hard words, tough words. Some of you might say, what the dickens are you talking about? We don't need tough love if that's what you're trying to do. This is my opinion as somebody who cares for our collective future, not only in the enclave and in the tiny republic with some 3 million people at best living there, but in the wider Armenian diaspora presence across the world. The recent war, friends, has proven that there aren't that many friends who will rush to defend Armenians if there is a war. So do remember that self-examination is a healthy choice, whilst continuing to drink from a poisoned chalice in the hope that it is vintage wine is an unhealthy choice too. Just think of some of what I've just said today. Accept it as food for thought or dismiss it, but that is my advice, my observation, my reflection with you today. Take care on this Sunday, which incidentally is Trinity Sunday too.